The Girl with the Ghost is a foster care memoir from Angela Hart. This was originally released in 2017. I think I read it for the first time somewhere between 2018 and 2020. And rereading it now, I could remember so much of this, and that's because it's such a shocking story. I've read many foster care memoirs and therefore many stories of child abuse and mental and emotional abuse, but nothing comes close to the abuse in The Girl and the Ghosts. This is about a little girl called Maria. She's 7 or 8 at the time when the story begins, and she's got some peculiar behaviors, not bad behaviors as such, although she can, have a tantrum and a temper and, lash out, but generally it's more peculiar behavior that one might describe as quirky until you realize that there's actually a deeper reason for this. It's a result of a lot of abuse. And I don't want to say too much about what these behaviors are because I don't want to give away the substance of the memoir. But basically, she starts to say strange things about her mother and her stepfather and how they treat her and the emotional and mental damage that they've caused is disgusting. And particularly the stepfather, he's one of the most horrific people I've ever read about in any foster care memoir ever. And yes, there is some physical abuse, and obviously that's horrendous, but it's the lasting mental abuse that's just really difficult to read about. And it's just shocking. And I don't, part of me wants to obviously go into a lot of detail about this, but I don't want to give away anything because it seems just page after page something else is revealed or something comes to light or there's another piece of the puzzle found and it just goes from one thing to the next. What's quite interesting is that while Maria has some contact with her mother and her stepfather, sometimes telephone contact, she does actually see her grandmother quite frequently. Her grandmother's called Babs, and sometimes she was quite an entertaining character. I say character because, of course, these are based on true stories but modified to protect the identities of those within the memoir. But sometimes I wanted to shake Babs by the shoulder and tell her to wake up because while she, in my opinion, never did things wrong on purpose, she made some pretty stupid decisions. And I'm sure you'll know exactly which decisions those are when you read it. And I do recommend you read it because it is very well done, very, very well written, very compelling, very fascinating, frustrating at times. There are a few specific things that happened that really annoyed me. And I'll discuss with a spoiler warning in a moment, actually, the two bits in this that just made me so furious. But if you haven't read it and you're a fan of Angela Hart's work, you will love this for the right reasons because it's well written, it's compelling, it's gripping, but obviously it's difficult to read for the wrong reasons in the sense that it's impossible to believe that this actually happened. I believe it's based on truth, of course I do, but to just think that this actually happened to a little girl, I don't want to believe it. I don't want to imagine that this is actually a true story because it is horrendous and it really also goes to show that obviously physical abuse can have lasting effects, but I'm firmly of the mind that mental abuse is typically a lot more long lasting and can have such detrimental long term effects on a person's ability to function and to live within society and to manage their emotions. And that's not to say Maria can't do those things, but without the right intervention, I'd say she wouldn't have stood a chance. And all I can say is it's really good that social services were able to intervene when they did. Definitely, definitely worth reading. So I guess I'll mention very briefly with a spoiler warning. Actually, before I do that, I want to mention the title because this is something that I didn't necessarily agree with. The ghost aspect referred to the fact that her mother is apparently psychic. And in the book, I kind of got the feeling that Angela was of the mind that that wasn't true. But for me, I am a spiritualist. I believe that some people have spiritual gifts. I know that some people definitely lie about it, but I believe that it is something that some people have. And I kind of got the sense that the book was hinting that that was not true and that her mother didn't have the gift. And I feel like I didn't agree with that because there's nothing to say her mother didn't. I'm not saying her mother used her gift in the right way, if she was gifted, but I didn't love that position within the book. But aside from that, I think it was definitely one of my favorites from Angela Hart for the right reasons, of course. Great to see that there is actually support there for children who are in a situation like Maria. But I don't want to think that children are actually in a situation like Maria because it's one of the most horrific, absolutely. So the things I was going to mention with a spoiler warning from now, the first point that really irritated me is when they have a meeting at her mother and stepfather's house, and Jerry, the stepfather, starts walking around the garden and is doing a salute from World War II. I can't say the words on YouTube without being demonetized, but you know what I mean. And his behavior was horrendous. And I felt sick. And I couldn't even imagine what it would feel like to be in that situation, to be in that environment with that disgusting person. The other thing that I hated is when Maria got that new foster carer who was stirring up trouble between everybody and saying that Angela wouldn't buy art supplies. And I don't understand. The excuse was given that he had problems at home, but that doesn't. Why would you make up lies just because you've got problems at home? I feel like we needed more answers there. I don't think the answers were available. I don't think that's information that was withheld from us as readers, but I just needed to know more. A part of me suspected that he was in cahoots with Maria's mother. There's no actual evidence for that, but I can't think of any other reason why you would stir things up other than to try and get the child back home, which is obviously not something that was ever going to happen at this point in the narrative. But why else would you do it? I don't understand. Maybe he was just a nasty, vindictive person in general. I don't know, but that really annoyed me. But it's good that a book can create those emotions, of course, that it can affect me in such a way because it proves that those bits are very well written. Definitely one that I recommend if you haven't read it. It's quite unlike pretty much every other foster carer memoir that I've read.